Welcome to Stories Before 3 a.m., where we uncover the chilling and unexplainable. Tonight, prepare yourself for 3 stories that will leave you questioning what's real. In our first story, a group of workers is tasked with demolishing an abandoned house. Yet one room remains untouched, resisting every blow. Strange noises echo from inside, and shadows flicker just out of sight. What is hidden behind those walls? Next, a woman moves into a new home for work, but her nights are filled with dread. She feels watched, and the unsettling presence only grows stronger. Then she sees her, the woman in white, standing in the dark. Is it a trick of the mind, or is something sinister lurking? Finally, a family moves into a house near the market, only to be haunted by strange footsteps and a foul stench that fills the air. As the clock strikes midnight, an unseen presence moves through the house, watching, waiting. These are stories where the supernatural meets reality. Let's dive into the darkness together. The following stories are based on personal beliefs. Please listen with discretion. There's a rumor about an old house at the end of my street. They say that whoever moves in never stays more than 2 weeks, no exceptions. The house, now derelict and abandoned, looks like a relic of the past. And while there have been attempts to demolish it, something always seems to prevent its destruction. In late 2003, a group of workers was hired to tear the house down. On the first day, everything went smoothly. They assessed the property and laid out their demolition plan. But on the second day, strange things began to happen. As they continued tearing through the old walls, one worker heard a peculiar noise coming from inside one of the rooms. He thought it might be rats scurrying away from the vibrations of the hammering. He dismissed it as nothing more than the sound of animals trying to escape. After checking the room and finding nothing, he shrugged it off and went back to work. The day dragged on, and by evening, the workers were exhausted. They called it a day, planning to return the next morning to finish the job. But that night, something strange lingered in their minds, the unsettling feeling that the house wasn't as empty as it seemed. The next morning, the workers returned, eager to finish the job and earn their pay. They resumed demolishing the walls, but there was one room they couldn't seem to break into. Every time they swung their hammers, they'd hear the same eerie noise, like a faint whisper coming from inside. They all stopped, exchanged uneasy glances, and decided to investigate. As they approached the room, a gust of wind suddenly swept past them. It came from nowhere, but they dismissed it, focused on finishing their work. Just as they were about to swing their hammers again, the strange sound returned, louder this time, as if someone was trapped inside. One of the workers, trembling, caught a glimpse of a shadow darting across the corner of the room. It moved too fast to be human, but it was unmistakably shaped like one. Everyone froze, staring at the spot where the shadow had appeared. None of them dared speak as the shape began to materialize. Slowly, its form becoming clearer, more distinct. No one could explain why this room was different. Every other part of the house could be demolished, yet this one room remained untouched. It became a point of eerie curiosity for the workers, who whispered among themselves, wondering what could be inside. Day after day, every attempt to tear down that room was met with the same resistance, an overwhelming sense of dread. The house, which had once stood tall, was now reduced to rubble, except for that one room, and no one, not a single worker, had the courage to continue the demolition. They feared what might happen if they did, terrified that the shadow might return, or worse, that it might escape. And so, the house remained as it was. Just one haunted room left standing, guarding its secret, waiting for the next curious soul to challenge its restless spirit. But no one ever did. The whispers in the village still persist, warning anyone who dares come close. The spirit still lingers, and it won't let go. This is a story shared by Nina. With my lifestyle, spending almost 100% of my time alone, eating alone, going everywhere alone, the company took notice. They approached me with an offer to work at a client's office in another province, a 3-year contract. After some consideration, I accepted. I had 2 weeks to prepare. The day finally came. The province I was assigned to was in the east, a mere 2-hour drive. Once we arrived, we unloaded my belongings into the new place, a 2-story townhouse with 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The bedrooms were on the 2nd floor, and none had an ensuite bathroom. There was 1 bathroom downstairs and 1 upstairs. Upon walking up the stairs, you'd find the 1st bedroom with the bathroom in the middle, and further down the hallway was the 2nd bedroom. I hated this house instantly. The company had told me that housing was hard to find, so I had to deal with it. The atmosphere was suffocating, dark and old, an unsettling mix of dampness and decay. Imagine stepping into a house with a dim, hollow front hall, a kitchen in a shadowy corner that smelled of mildew. To the left was an old iron railing staircase leading to the 2nd floor. There, the narrow hallway was separated by a rusty railing, with the bathroom in the middle and the 2 bedrooms on either side. Even with the lights on, everything felt dim, like the house itself was alive, watching. I have some sensitivity to these things, and I was sure there was a presence here. My bedroom was the first one at the top of the stairs. I had to share the house with 2 other co-workers, strangers from different departments. Their room was the 2nd one. We all settled into our rooms. My bedroom had an old air conditioner, 2 wooden windows, and a creaky wooden door that opened onto a small balcony. The room wasn't large, but it had a heavy, oppressive feeling. There was definitely some negative energy here. Still, I had no choice. I had to stay. The contract required me to live here for at least 6 months to get my deposit back. After that, I could find an apartment. That first night, I knew I'd wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. And that's when the fear hit. To go to the bathroom, I had to open my door and face the dark staircase right in front of me, which in feng shui they say is terrible luck. The bathroom was to the right, the dim yellowish light barely illuminating the path. I forced myself to walk to the bathroom, my heart pounding. After I rushed back to my room, I tried to sleep, convincing myself that it was just my imagination. On the 2nd night, I started feeling something else. A strange sensation, like someone was watching me. I drifted in and out of sleep, only to wake suddenly as if I was falling, as though I had plummeted through the air. I couldn't sleep after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a gaze on me, unseen but undeniable. I kept waking up, checking the clock. It was 3:30 a.m., and I needed to get up soon to catch the work shuttle. At breakfast, I asked my roommates how they slept. They said it wasn't too bad, and they were glad to have each other for company. They asked if I was okay, and I could only manage a half-hearted smile. By the 3rd night, things escalated. I started smelling something rotten. Every time I tried to sleep, I'd experience that same falling sensation, but worse this time. A woman, an unseen presence, would pin me down, pressing her weight onto my chest. I was so scared that I stayed sitting up against the wall, trying not to fall asleep. Yet, Exhaustion overtook me, and I dozed off sitting up. It was unbearable. But I had signed a 3-year contract. There was no going back. In the morning, my coworkers looked as worn out as I did, but didn't say much. When I returned home after work, I saw that they had set up an offering downstairs, a tray with incense, food, and flowers. I asked them what was going on, but they said nothing. I shrugged it off, but my room reeked more than ever. When I opened the window, I found a dead cat on the balcony. It wasn't just dead. It looked as if it had been there for days, yet I'd never noticed it before. I called out to the neighbors, and they came to take their pet's body away. That night, the 4th night, was the worst. I was so scared I stayed up watching TV shows, anything to distract me. But every time I dozed off, I felt the same falling sensation. And I knew she would come if I lay down. This time, though, she didn't just come in my dreams. She appeared. I got up to use the bathroom, and when I opened the door, I saw a dark shadow at the top of the stairs. I forced myself to walk past it, turn on the bathroom light, and get back to my room. But as soon as I shut the door, there she was, the woman in white, standing right there at my doorway. She vanished in a blink, but I knew this wasn't just my mind playing tricks on me. That was it. I couldn't stay any longer. I needed to find a new place, fast. By the next afternoon, I had found an apartment, packed my things, and left that house for good. Later, my roommates admitted that they, too, had seen her, the woman in white. She had appeared to them multiple times standing in their room. They had tried offering prayers, but nothing helped. They didn't tell me because they didn't want to scare me, but it was too late. We had all seen her. Gigi, a street food vendor, had her eyes on a prime stall in a bustling market. It was perfect, a spot she knew would guarantee steady income. But there was a challenge. She lived with her husband, a police officer, in the police barracks. If she were to sell in this new market, she'd need to find a house to rent nearby for convenience. Her husband agreed. After all, her food business brought in far more money than his salary as a sergeant. With a teenage daughter in high school, expenses were piling up, and the extra income was crucial. Besides, Gigi's younger sister and her elderly father were living with them, and her sister helped with the business, meaning they didn't need to hire outside help. They decided that the husband and daughter would stay in their house at the police barracks, while Gigi, her sister, and their father would move closer to the market. On days off, they could visit each other easily. It was a practical arrangement that seemed perfect. On the day Gigi and her sister searched for a rental, they stumbled upon a large old house deep within a narrow alley. The house was surrounded by a fence and, though aged, still in good condition. A wooden sign on the gate read, "House for Rent." Gigi immediately called the number. The next day, around 11 a.m., her husband, with the help of his subordinates, moved their few belongings, mostly kitchen equipment, into the new house. Afterward, they shared a meal before her husband and daughter returned home, as both had work and school the following day. Gigi couldn't help but notice the strange glances from the neighbors. They weren't hostile, just curious, as though they had questions they didn't dare ask. It seemed they wanted to approach her, but something held them back. It didn't matter. Gigi knew that in the food business, you had to be friendly with those around you. Once they got familiar with her face, they'd talk, and she was fine with waiting. The house was a 2-story wooden structure. Her father chose to sleep downstairs, offering to guard the house. The second floor had 2 rooms. Her sister took the eastern room near the temple wall, leaving the larger western room for Gigi. That first night, exhausted, the family went to bed early. Gigi knew she had to rise by 3 a.m. to buy supplies for the market, but at midnight, she was woken by the sound of footsteps downstairs. Someone was pacing. It had to be her father. Who else could it be? She glanced at the clock on the bedside table. It read 12 minutes past midnight. Why was her father still awake? She dismissed it and went back to sleep. The next morning, she asked her father if he had trouble sleeping. "I slept early," he replied casually. "Didn't wake until you were off to the market." Curious, Gigi asked her sister if she had heard anything the night before. Her sister shook her head. "Nope, I slept right through. If anyone was walking, it had to be Dad." Gigi felt a chill. She had distinctly heard footsteps, clearly. Could it have been a thief on their first night? But nothing seemed to be missing. On the second night, Gigi was more alert. She didn't tell her father or sister about her suspicions, but she kept an ear out for any unusual sounds. For a while, everything was quiet, and she almost convinced herself that she had imagined it the night before. At around 10 p.m., she fell asleep. But again, she woke with a start, this time to the sound of footsteps climbing the wooden stairs. The faint creaking of the old steps sent her heart racing. She strained to listen. Someone was coming up to the second floor, slow and deliberate. Gigi's breath caught in her throat as she was overwhelmed by the stench of rotting decay, a putrid odor that seemed to emanate from the very walls. It clung to the air, thick and nauseating, assaulting her senses. She glanced at the clock again. It was midnight. Exactly. It couldn't be her father, could it? He wouldn't come upstairs at this hour. And her sister had no reason to sneak around quietly. The only other explanation was terrifying. A burglar. Once again, the clock read 12 minutes past midnight. Gigi's mind raced with fear, but she knew better than to confront the intruder. Her husband had taught her to stay safe. Whatever the thief wanted, they could take. Her life wasn't worth risking over material possessions. The creaking stopped. Somewhere outside, stray dogs began to howl, a chilling sound that echoed through the alley, as if the animals sensed something unnatural. Gigi prayed her father or sister would hear the noise and wake up. But the footsteps continued, creeping closer, heavier. And then, silence. Suddenly, her father and sister awoke, breaking the stillness. Gigi heard them stirring, and the footsteps stopped as if they were never there. Her sister opened the door and stepped into the hallway. "Did you hear someone on the stairs?" "No," her sister replied, frowning. "Who would be walking at this hour?" Gigi swallowed her fear. Maybe it was better to keep this strange event to herself. But the third night, everything escalated. Gigi was the last to go to bed. She checked the house thoroughly before sleeping, satisfied that everything was in order. She fell into a deep slumber almost immediately from exhaustion. At exactly 12 minutes past midnight, she awoke again. This time, the air in her room was thick with a dense white fog. The chill was so intense it made her skin prickle. And there was that smell again, the stench of rotting flesh, stronger than ever, suffocating her. She tried to move but found her body completely paralyzed. She was trapped, unable to even lift a finger. Panic surged through her veins as she heard something shifting at the door. A soft, persistent scraping, inching closer to her still form.
"What are you doing in my house?"
Desperately, Gigi wanted to scream, but her voice was locked in her throat. And then it appeared. A shadow loomed over her, climbing onto her chest. A man, his face dark and smeared with blood, his body soaked in a pool of it. His hollow eyes bore into hers as he hissed through gritted teeth.
Leave.
His voice was coarse, accented, as if from a place long forgotten. Gigi's mouth moved, but no sound came out. She could only silently beg, "Please don't hurt me." The figure leaned in closer, its cold, large hands wrapping around her neck. Gigi gasped, her breath stifled. She fought to inhale, but the pressure was too much. She was suffocating, her life slipping away. Desperation filled her as she prayed, calling on the strength of any divine force to save her. And then, just as the darkness closed in, a loud banging at the door shattered the night. Her father and sister burst into the room, pulling her back from the brink of death. "Gigi, wake up!" Her sister shook her. Her father hovered close. "It's like she's having a seizure," he said, worry etched into his voice. Slowly, Gigi regained her strength, her body finally responding as the fog lifted and the scent of rotting flesh faded. The man was gone. The next day, Gigi told her father and sister everything. Her father nodded solemnly and said, "You've been possessed." Her father and sister revealed that they had both dreamed of an ancestor, telling them to wake her from a nightmare. That's what had saved her life. The next morning, Gigi called her husband, packed up, and left the haunted house for good. She would never challenge a restless spirit again. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell icon so you never miss an update.